Hello everyone, Hyper here, and welcome to the patch 7.3 Frost DK guide. Now if you've been keeping track of the patch notes and what's going on the PTR, with this patch, Blizzard did a huge rework to Frost, where they nerfed a few talents, buffed other ones, and actually reshuffled some of our talents. Now this resulted in the emergence of the Runic Obliteration build. If you've seen my previous guides, you probably already know what to expect, and if not, here's a quick rundown of what you will be seeing in this video. I will go over talents, stats, legendaries, tier, trinket, relics, consumables, rotation, cooldown usage, and some more specific ability usage such as Gathering Storm and Sindragosa's Fury. This video will be mainly a raid guide, and when I go over talents and talk about legendaries and such, I might mention which ones are good for Mythic Plus, but if I don't, these are for raid bosses. First of all, let's go over the talents. In row 56, you will choose Runic Attenuation. Now this is the best talent out of the three, and it pulls ahead by quite a bit when it comes to single target. In row 57, you will take Murderous Efficiency, and in 58, you will take Ice Cap. Ice Cap is core to this build, especially in this patch, because with tier 20 and the chest legendary Cold Heart, it lines up really nicely with Pillar of Frost. In row 60, it doesn't really matter, I prefer Winter is Coming. In row 75, this again is a situational choice. You can take Volatile Shielding, which allows you to stay in a dangerous place on a raid boss. Permafrost, this is good against steady damage, where there's not really huge burst, but it just gives a nice little shield. Inexorable Assault, this is good for bosses with high downtime. Also very good for bosses that are on farm, and I definitely suggest taking this if you're trying to parse. In row 90, you will take Gathering Storm, and in the row 100, you will take Obliteration, which is also core to this build. Now for Mythic Plus, these talents change slightly. In the first row, you will take Icy Talons, second row, Freezing Fog, third row, Ice Cap, fourth row, Winter is Coming, fifth row, again situational but most likely Permafrost. In the sixth row, Frostbite, seventh row, Obliteration, and this might vary depending on the affixes. Sometimes you might need more single target, other times you need more AoE, so make sure to adjust accordingly. Don't just take this as a cookie cutter build and just run it in all of the situations. Next, let's go over stats. There's one breakpoint that I definitely suggest reaching, which is 20% crit. After the 20% crit, you can stack haste and then any additional crit. The mastery and versatility are about equal when it comes to single target. But when it comes to cleaving and AoE, actually mastery becomes our third best stat after the crit soft cap. So it goes crit to 20%, then haste, then mastery, and then any additional crit. So a good balance of stats is always important for Frost, and in general, as you know from probably my previous videos, strength is always king when it comes to Frost. In general, a 5 item level difference will mean an upgrade for you, unless you're trying to reach one of those breakpoints such as the 20% crit. There are also a few haste breakpoints, but they're definitely not worth pursuing, just because Obliteration is kind of a minor cooldown for us. For enchants, on your neck you will want to use Mark of the Claw, on your cloak you'll obviously want Strength, and on your rings you will want to enchant Haste if you're above 20% crit, or crit if you're below the 20% mark. Now for tier, I will give you the same advice I've given to pretty much every Frost DK throughout the expansion. Use the 4 pieces that have the highest item level on them. Since most Frost DKs will be using the chest legendary Cold Heart, which I will go over here next, you only have 5 slots open, and all 5 are about equal in power, so just pick the ones that have the highest item level for you and roll with that. For legendaries this time, we will do it slightly differently. I will only go over the best legendaries, since most people will already have most legendaries, if not all legendaries for a certain spec. So for tier S, we have the chest, the bracers, and the belt. The best combo is definitely the chest and the bracers. If you have the belt, you can also use that either along with the bracers or the chest, but overall it's not as big of a DPS increase. Now for trinkets, out of Tomb of Sargeras, you should be using Cradle of Anguish, Spectre of Betrayal, or Engine of Eradication. And then if it comes to AoE, you can also use the Umbral Moonglaves. There's a few other trinkets out of either Mythic Pluses or other raids that might be good, such as high item level stat sticks, mementos, things like that, but those need to be high enough item level to compete with the Tomb of Sargeras trinkets. For relics, there's basically two priorities. There's a single target priority and then an AoE priority. I will give you what in my opinion is overall the best priority to go by. Your top relic is Ambidexterity. After that, which is about equal, is Cold as Ice, because this buffs your AoE and your single target damage. Then you can either go for Blast Radius or Nothing But the Boots. Blast Radius will give you a slightly more AoE and cleave oriented damage increase, while Nothing But the Boots will give you a more single target damage increase. This is completely up to you, but these are definitely the 4 relics that I would be looking at getting. Now for consumables, of course you want to be using the Strength Feast, which is by far our best food, and if your guild doesn't have that, or your raid doesn't provide that, then you can also use Haste Food if you're above the crit breakpoint. And along with this, of course you'll be using Potion of Prolonged Power, which is overall the best damage increase for us. Now let's go over the rotation. Our opener is pretty simple. You will want to Howling Blast on pull, then Remorseless Winter along with Pillar of Frost. Then you will want to Obliterate twice and use up your Chains of Ice. This will use up all your runes, then you can go straight into Obliteration. During Obliteration, our priority shifts. Obviously, we always want to use up our Killing Machine procs. And then you will want to use up the Howling Blast procs to trigger Killing Machine. If you don't have any Rhyme procs, then you use Frost Strike to trigger Killing Machine, and you just alternate between the abilities. The key here is that every other global should be an Obliterate. As a Frost DK, we have a pretty clear priority list when it comes to abilities. We always want to keep Remorseless Winter on cooldown. After that, we're looking at consuming our procs. So if we have Obliterate or Howling Blast proc, we want to use those up. After we've used our procs, we'll be looking at spending our runes, and then our runic power with Frost Strike. Next, let's talk a little bit about cooldown usage. You should use Pillar of Frost on cooldown, and it will probably line up with Cold Heart and the Spectre of Betrayal pretty nice. Pillar of Frost will come up before Obliteration, but as long as Obliteration is within 10 seconds of coming off cooldown, you're fine to pop Pillar. Empower Rune Weapon is kind of our free reset, so you want to use it whenever you're out of runes and mostly out of runic power. I also wanted to briefly mention Gathering Storm in this section, because Gathering Storm can be a really powerful talent if used correctly. You will want to use Remorseless Winter on cooldown. However, before using Remorseless Winter, you want to have around 3 runes saved up and be low on runic power, because as soon as you pop Remorseless Winter, ideally you will want to Obliterate once or twice to instantly put yourself at higher stacks. Now if you pop Remorseless Winter again, while you still have Gathering Storm stacks active, it will actually refresh the stacks. This will probably only happen during Bloodlust or Time Warp. Now you're probably wondering why I haven't mentioned Sindragosa's Fury in the rotation section. I kinda wanted to talk about separately because this is a very powerful cooldown, and if used correctly, it can do extremely high amounts of burst damage. First of all, let's talk about the ideal usage for it. You will want to have Fallen Crusader and Pillar of Frost active, along with any strength or mastery increasing buffs. This includes potions, concordance, and any trinket procs. Ideally, you want to hit as many targets as possible, but most of the time on bosses, you will only hit 1 or 2 targets with it, which is completely fine. I definitely recommend having a weak Korra help you track all these buffs, because keeping an eye on all these actives and procs can be kind of difficult at times. Most of the time, you won't have all these procs before going into Obliteration, so you will have to wait until your Obliteration is over to actually use your Sindragosa's Fury, which is about 15 to 20-ish seconds into the fight. If all these line up before Obliteration, go ahead and use it before Obliteration, because that means they will come off cooldown sooner. This again varies with fight length. On some fights, you might get an extra Sindragosa's Fury, and on other fights you might not. This means that the time you can actually sit on Sindragosa's Fury without using it differs depending on the fight length. And you should definitely look at logs and your guild's kill time to figure out if you should be holding Sindragosa's Fury, for example on second potion, or you should just be using it as soon as possible. That's pretty much all I have for the patch 7.3 Frost DK guide. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments section and I will try to answer them as soon as I can. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. I've also started streaming at least 4 days a week, so if you'd like to chat with me directly or just hang out, drop by at twitch.tv/Hyperion29, and you can also follow me on Twitter at LegendHyperion to see whenever I go live or whenever I'm posting new content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.